Welcome to the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Serenitas. Coming to you a little late tonight. We're usually on much earlier than this, but scheduling conflict with yours truly made us a little later here. But I'm John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, our lead college football writer, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Doing really well, because I don't have to see any more election ads when I watch football. That's something we all can rejoice in. So,
Are you done with the Joyce Craig Kelly Ayotte ads?
I am so done, especially considering we have no say in it. So I am pumped that will be free from our televisions over the weekend. So excited to talk football and move on from that.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of people are ready to move on. This election cycle was taxing. I think a lot of people are ready to move on with life. It's interesting being in the education field today. Obviously, there was certainly a melancholy attitude at work, but I also felt a lot of relief across the board that people are glad it's over now. We know who won, and people can move on. So
exactly,
it is what it is. I mean, you know what? I'm not going to miss the Trump Kamala Harris commercials during football games. Unfortunately, though, I'd rather watch Kamala Harris commercials or Trump commercials over the stupid Christmas commercials the first week of November.
Yeah, true.
So, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, we get it. We're a capitalist society, but do you need to cram Christmas down our throat a month before Thanksgiving? Like, stop.
Right.
All right. As always, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Yolked. If you're looking for a safe and effective protein powder to add to your workout routine, well, and Yolked is that product. Tastes like birthday cake, only 47 calories. It's delicious, safe, and effective, made from real egg yolks. Visit yolk.com today for more information, and there are always discount deals there too if you want to do some kind of a team thing as well. All right, so because we are a little short on time this week, we're going to kind of do a overall all-encompassing review of the week that was, and then we'll preview the upcoming week. And I think for me, Ryan, BC was off this week, so we don't need to talk about them. UMass loses a tough one to Mississippi State after getting off to a good start. We'll get to that in a sec. Perhaps the story of the season in Division I football in New England is the Rhode Island Rams, who had an unbelievable come-from-behind 37-28 win over Monmouth on Saturday. I was there for that one. I covered that one. This is a team that's now 8-1, 5-0 in the CAA. It's their fifth come-from-behind win of the season. This has been a phenomenal season for Jim Fleming in this program. And, I've said this to you before, and I said it to Paige Messier, who's worked with us. Her and I did a quick little thing after the game, and Paige is a URI alumnus. And I said to her, and she agreed with me, this might not be Jim Fleming's best team the last 3 years. He might have had more talent a couple of years ago than he does on this team. And this isn't a knock on this team by any means, because there's plenty of talent on this team. But those guys, that staff, Fleming and his staff, they've done a tremendous job down there getting these guys to buy in. 2 new quarterbacks in the mix, starting new faces at a lot of key positions, but they've gotten these guys to buy in, and they have been an incredible story this season.
Yeah, when I saw they were down, I was nervous, thinking, okay, we talked about this last week. Is this a game that they can afford to drop if they don't win the CAA? And you're like, maybe, because Monmouth is, not the best record, but they are still a solid team. But the fact that they're able to pull it out, and like you said, it's not their best team that we've seen, but they just keep finding ways to win. And if you're a Rams fan, you've got to think, all right, we've got 8 wins. This should be good enough, right? This should be good enough to get in. And obviously you're thinking CAA title now too, especially now, right? So I'm really happy for them, and to be able to pull that out the way they did was really impressive.
It is impressive. And when you look at the rest of their schedule, tough one this week. They got to go on the road down to Delaware, but Delaware, of course, is ineligible to win the CAA. They're also not eligible to make the FCS playoffs, and then come home for Albany, a game they should win. It'll be senior day. Jim Fleming implored the student body and alumni alike to show up for that one. They've been getting great crowds at Meade Stadium all season long. And then, of course, they wrap up the season in a rivalry game when they travel to Smithfield to take on Bryant on November 23rd. So, yeah, on paper, 2 of those 3 games are games you should win. The Delaware game is going to be a battle, but they are well positioned to win the CAA. and get a playoff berth in the FCS playoffs. And even if they don't win the CAA by any chance, they still have done enough now that they should be able to get an at-large playoff bid. Of course, another big game this weekend in Division I college football in New England was Harvard at Dartmouth. Harvard coming from behind to beat Dartmouth 31-27 in what was an unbelievable game. Harvard started off strong early, scored, carried the play. Dartmouth storms back. Fourth quarter, Harvard storms back. Both teams are now 5-1 on the season. An unbelievable win for Harvard on the road.
Yeah, Jaden Craig just showing why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Ivy League. Not the best running game, too, from Harvard, which is kind of typical of that Dartmouth defense. They're always very stout against that. But
by the way, I take that back. Both teams are 6-1 now. I said 5-1. They're both 6-1.
Right. Yeah. And, I think it's just it's excellent to see Dartmouth there, but you've got to think, now that Harvard has the tiebreaker over them, and this was at home, and this was, arguably one of their biggest games in I think recent memory, right? And Jackson Proctor played pretty well too. It's these small margins that really separate them. But the 14 unanswered points in the fourth quarter is I got to be the killer, especially considering the way Dartmouth is playing at that point.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point here in that this was a game where if you're Dartmouth, obviously you needed to win this one to stay in the driver's seat to win the Ivy League. And certainly this Dartmouth team had the formula and the pieces to get it done against Harvard. But losing the way they did, Coach McCorkle and the staff have done a great job. They'll bounce back. They got a lot of senior leadership on that team. They're still in a pretty good spot to at least get a piece of an Ivy League title. But for Harvard, I mean, when you can go up to Hanover and win a game like that, I think what it says is, okay, I think it's safe to say they have officially bounced back from that Brown loss. They're back to being the favorite now in the Ivy League, and they're pretty well positioned. I mean, they've got to take care of business here down the stretch. But if they can take care of business, if both teams finish with the same record, Harvard obviously holds the tiebreaker over Dartmouth. They would be your league champion. But this has been quite a turnaround for Coach Orich and his staff. They've done a tremendous job getting this Harvard program back on track. Couple of other notable scores. Of course, UConn ends up bowl eligible after their big win on Friday night over Georgia State in the last home game of the regular season at the Rent. They're now on the road for their last three. They traveled to UAB this week in a winnable game. Then they visit Syracuse the week after, and then they wrap up the season against the alma mater when they travel to Amherst to take on UMass. Look, say what you will, this program is 6-3. There's been speculation it could be playing in the Cure Bowl, the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They're tied into a couple bowls here, but nonetheless, a great bounce back year for this program coming off a very disappointing season last year.
Yeah, and again, not a particularly breakout game from Nick Evers, but fantastic from the running game. Mel Brown, 138 yards and a touchdown. Every week, they just seem to pass the torch, right? It's literally like, is it Darrell Robinson this week? Is it Cam Edwards this week? Mel Brown coming out of the woodwork here as a young guy. So they're able to just, shove the ball and, just be like, sorry, you're not going to stop us today. And when they get that going, they're very, very hard to beat. So, doing it under the lights, CBS Sports Network on TVs is great exposure too, I think, for the Huskies. I mean, these are maybe small things that maybe aren't a big deal, but I think that they're a big deal, right? I don't care that Georgia State was 2-5 coming into it, right? This is a noteworthy game, not one of the only games on TV that night, and you take care of business and you look at that record 6-3. And so, yeah, I think that the only thing that you're thinking as a Huskies fan is, what hopefully fun destination do I get to go to, right? You're hoping Myrtle Beach as opposed to Birmingham, Alabama, right? Or something like that. But it's exciting times. And you're like we said last week, all right, we're good. Last year was just kind of a blip. So.
Yeah, and I think, look, obviously they did a great job in the portal. They reloaded the roster. It's interesting because they're 6-3, but they haven't been consistent. The offense was rolling there for a while. All of a sudden now the offense has really slowed down. They haven't really gotten much out of the passing game. They've been winning the way they've been winning for 3 years under Moore, which is running the football and then leaning on that front seven to make stops and win you games. And in many ways, they're winning like they were 2 years ago when that was the formula. They're back to doing that again. But I think if they're going to finish strong here and win a bowl game potentially, they're going to need more out of Nick Evers in that passing game. There's talent there at the receiver position, but they've got to figure out a way to get those guys the ball and make some big plays. Of course, the alma mater got off to a 10-0 lead against Mississippi State on the road in Starkville. Unfortunately, you got to play 4 quarters, and UMass didn't do that. They ended up losing to Mississippi State in a game that, when you look at the score, you think, all right, they got blown out again. What's the point of talking about this? But I think when you look at the score, Ryan, they hung in there. I mean, they played tough. Like I said, they got off to a good start, ended up losing 45-20. But are there positives we can take from that, or is it another UMass loss?
I mean, I watched the first half of the game, right? And I feel like for someone who follows UMass, and I feel like maybe a lot can relate, when they were up 10-0, you're completely numb to it. It means nothing just because you know what's going to happen, right? 10 points, then 21 unanswered in the second quarter, 14 in the third quarter, right? I mean, the biggest positive, I think, is that, you started well, I guess, right? And I think A.J. Hairston got his first touchdown pass, the redshirt freshman. Ahmad Hassan got some reps in. So I think that was what was important, right? Just seeing those guys get some reps because you were hoping maybe to see those guys get more. Brandon Campbell had another pretty solid day, which I think is important. And I'm not going to say things would have been different, but there were definitely some calls that were a little suspect earlier in the game from the SEC officiating that I was a little curious about, right? That was little. Again, it would not have changed the total outcome of the game, right? But I do think that, a couple times there was a few calls that were iffy, but I still think Mississippi State would have won. Overall, you probably came out there healthier than, which is important. But yeah, you started well, but again, it's just one of those, like, how many times can you be like, is it an accomplishment because you were up 10-0? Or is it like, I don't know. I don't even know what to take away from it. So,
yeah. Well, they're on a bye this week. They do come back next weekend. On the 16th of November, they will be hosting Liberty at home. Liberty is going to either be coming into that game 5-3 or 6-2. And then they finish off the year going to Georgia the weekend of the 23rd. And then, of course, so Thanksgiving weekend, they wrap up the season at home in the rivalry game against UConn. UNH got back on track. Big win for them. Maine goes to Oklahoma, plays tough for about the first 10 minutes of the game, scored first to take an early lead, 7-0, and then Oklahoma decided, okay, enough effing around, we're going to play football. Nonetheless, great experience for Maine, great exposure for the program, the school. This is why you play these money games, because they not only help you financially, but they can also help you in recruiting as well. Bryant played a competitive game against Stony Brook. In terms of some of the other games in the area to keep an eye on. Brown loses to Penn. Tough loss for the Bears after a dramatic win over Cornell the week before. So that was some of the action in New England last weekend, week 10, which is hard to believe that it was week 10. You are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. Just a reminder that if you're looking for a safe and effective product to add to your workout routine, well, then Yolked is that product. With only 47 calories per packet, it tastes great, has low calories, and it will help enhance your workout, and it will help you develop more muscle. Visit Yolked.com today for more information. All right, Mr. Barry, let's jump ahead to this week's slate and take a look at the matchups this weekend in New England in Division I college football. We're going to start with the Boston College Eagles, who are coming off a bye. They host the Syracuse Orange, or I believe they're just the Orange now. I don't believe they're Orange men anymore. But Boston College is favored by 2 in this one. The over-under is 53.5. It's hard for me to go with this Boston College team right now, man. They laid an egg after a bye a couple of weeks ago. They've scuffled of late. They need to win 2 to earn a bowl bid. I don't know if they can. I mean, the schedule down the stretch is tough. They got Syracuse this week, at SMU, North Carolina, Pitt. Those are 4 tough games, particularly, next week at SMU. All that being said, Syracuse has dipped a little bit here. They've lost a couple of games here the last few weeks. Is this a spot where Boston College can bounce back?
I don't know, John. I'm going back and forth on this because in my head I'm like, is Syracuse going to really be 7-2 right after this game? You know, especially with the way they play and having to eke out an overtime win against Virginia Tech. You know, getting blown out by Pitt, but they do have a couple good wins. NC State, UNLV, right? They beat Holy Cross, and it's I don't know. I'm more inclined to pick Syracuse here because BC has already come off of a bye and did not look good, right? And you would hope that they are able to do that, but I just don't know. And I'm gonna take BC here just because I feel like this is kind of this is their season right now. You know, you lose this game and you're really staring down the barrel of not going to a bowl game. So I'm gonna pick them. I don't know if I necessarily trust Kyle McCord. He turns the ball over. You gotta get him to turn the ball over this week, or I think you're not going to be able to win. But I'm going to take the Eagles to try and salvage the season here. I don't, it'd be 4 straight losses if they don't win though.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for me because part of me wants to go Syracuse here. You mentioned Kyle McCord off to a great start, then he kind of fell off. Syracuse to me has the pieces to come in here and take care of business and pick up that 7th win. I think my issue here is McCord's play of late is concerning. They've come back to earth a little bit, got shellacked last week. Boston College has had 2 weeks to prepare for him, must win for the Eagles. I think they get it done. I think they cover. I think they end up winning by 3 to 7 points. I don't think that this is going to be a blowout by any means. I think they win by 3. I think this is an easy number here if you're looking for a short favorite. I'm going to go with Boston College here. I think the Eagles bounce back to improve to 5-4 and put themselves in position to become bowl eligible. All right, UConn is on the road this week, finally, after playing a lengthy homestand. They're at UAB. UAB, of course, coached by former Tampa Bay Buccaneer and Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl winning quarterback Trent Dilfer. The Blazers are 2-6. UConn is favored in this one by 6.5. The OU on this one is 56.5.
I'm going to take the Huskies just because the UAB has just been a mess. I know they won last week against Tulsa, but they're allowing a lot of points, 44 to Army, 71 to Tulane, 41 to Navy, even, 21 last week to not so great Tulsa team. I think Trent Dilfer should have stayed on TV. Give me the Huskies. Yeah.
That's poignant analysis about poor Trent Dilfer. Yeah, he's not a fan favorite there. That's for sure. He has not endeared himself. When you look at where that program was when Bill Clark was coaching it, they were in an unbelievable spot. And if you remember, a few years ago, they shut the program down for a couple of years, and then he resurrected it.
Yeah.
They are not that program anymore. UConn should go into Birmingham this week and take care of business. I like the Huskies, too. Only thing I'll say with this team is they can be very frustrating, Ryan. You think you figured them out. You think that they could put it together and go on the road and win, but something tells me to be careful with this pick. You might want to think about maybe UAB as a dog here, but UConn will get it done. But that 6.5 scares me because UConn can also go down there and do enough to win and only win by a field goal. So we shall see. All right, real quick, I'm looking to see if DraftKings put up the college football odds for FCS. It does not look like they have. They usually put them up on Saturdays. Of course, Maction kicked off last night. So UMass will be playing Maction games next year, by the way. I don't think we've talked about that enough.
Yeah, I hope they're away to start because that's going to be a tough one to get out there for midweek. So
yeah. No, I agree with you. But in any event, they haven't put up their lines yet. So we are going to start with the CAA. We figure we'll do what we've been doing all along, which is we'll make them up. We're going to start with Bryant visiting Maine. Black Bears are favored in this one by 6.5. Maine at 4-5. Of course, Bryant at 2-7. Really disappointing season for the Bulldogs. There's a lot of hope around the program after they beat Brown, but they weren't able to capitalize on that. They have since lost, I believe, 4 in a row. So it's been a tough stretch here for Bryant. Maine coming off a blowout loss to Oklahoma. Give me Maine here. I think that having to go all the way up to Orono to play this game is going to be tough for Bryant. That Maine offense has been pretty good. Carter Peavy doing a great job at quarterback. I like Maine in this one to cover.
Yeah, same. I like Maine as well. I will give a shout out to Bryant for a Stony Brook team that's pretty solid, taking the overtime last week. But I think the Black Bears bounced back after last week, and they continue to stay in form here.
All right, next up we have URI visiting Delaware. Delaware is favored in this one by 2. URI, of course, if they can win this one, pretty much put themselves in the driver's seat. And I don't want to say they're locked to win the CAA, but they're in really good shape to win it. Be a tough test on the road, though, against Coach Carty's Blue Hens.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Blue Hens. I think this is a game they might get a little tripped up. I just think these games have been too close. They've been coming back too much. It's on the road. If there's a game you can afford to lose, it is this one, just because of who Delaware is. I don't know how it affects the CAA standings if you lose to this team in regards to the overall CAA picture. Kind of feels like if you lose to them, it shouldn't count against your conference record. I know that's not how it probably works with them departing, but if they're not going to be eligible, then why should it count? But give me the Blue Hens here.
Well, it's pretty tight at the top. I mean, URI's 5-0 in the CAA. Richmond's 4-1. Of course, they're leaving as well. They're going to be joining the Patriot League. It says here that Villanova, I'm sorry, I'm looking at their home record. I apologize. 8-1, obviously. Oh, I'm sorry. Within the conference, URI's 5-0, Richmond's 5-0 in the conference, Villanova's 4-1. So if they do lose to Delaware, now all of a sudden you have a 5-way tie at the top of the CAA. So this is a huge game for them. Delaware doesn't qualify to win it, but Villanova does. So you need this one. It's a big one. I'm going to go with Delaware as well, but this is going to come down the stretch here. And URI may end up needing some help if they do lose Saturday in order to win the CAA. All right, next up we have Monmouth visiting UNH. UNH is favored in this one by 3.5.
Tough one. I like the way that UNH bounced back last week. I like the way that they're playing. But, Monmouth is dangerous with Derek Robertson, especially coming off a loss. They're probably going to be pretty pissed. But
good skill group.
What's that?
Good skill group.
Yes, yeah, and a good skill group. Yeah, so I'm going to take the Wildcats here. I just like the momentum. Seth Morgan's back, but I think it's going to be very close. But I will not be surprised at all if Monmouth wins this one. It does kind of just feel like the way the CAA this year. I could totally see they'll both be 5-5. They'll both be 3-3 if Monmouth wins in conference play. So I think I almost want to pick Monmouth here, but I'm going to take UNH just because I like how they bounce back.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UNH in this one. I mean, big bounce back win for them last week. I think that they keep it rolling. Now Monmouth defense fell apart in the second half last week. Very generous. I think that the generosity continues this week. All right, let's shift gears here and go to the Ivy League. We're going to start with Dartmouth, looking to bounce back after a tough loss to Harvard. They're on the road against Princeton, a Princeton program that's down right now. Dartmouth is favored in this one by 6.5.
Yeah, give me the big green. I think they're going to be pretty pissed after losing last week. And, 2 straight losses for Princeton, letting up 49 points against Cornell last week in a loss, I think tells you a lot about where they're at. So give me the big green.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the big green as well. I think they're going to stay in this thing until the end. They're going to make it interesting. I think they get back on track, win this one, and improve to 7-1. Next up, we have an all-New England matchup when Brown at 3-4 visits Yale at 4-3. The Bulldogs are favored in this one by 4.5.
I think this has got to be probably one of the most challenging picks of this weekend because, Brown losing last week does not instill faith in you, right? But then again, Yale losing to Columbia, but at least Columbia is pretty decent. So give me the Bulldogs being at home. I just can't trust Brown at this point.
Yeah, it's so hard. This Brown team's been tough to figure out. You really thought after they beat Harvard that they were turning that corner, and that was going to be the stepping stone that this program needed to take that next step and be an Ivy League contender. It just hasn't happened. I think it's disappointing if you're a Brown fan. I just think this Yale team has been very helter-skelter all season, but they're really talented offensively. I could see them really having a big day at the office offensively against a Brown defense that has struggled. They struggled last week in the loss to Penn. Give me Yale in this one as well. I think they cover that one. Next up, we have a game that I believe you're going to be at. Is that correct?
I will be, yes.
Yeah, so we have Harvard hosting Columbia. Columbia is the forgotten team, by the way, in the Ivy League. They're currently 5-2. They still have a shot of winning an Ivy League title or at least getting a piece of it. Big game here for Harvard. The Crimson are favored by 7.5, but this has the potential to be a really good game.
Yeah, give me Harvard here. I like them at home. I'm excited to get out there for my first Harvard game of the season. They're always a fun cover, especially for how well they're playing this year. But I think this will be pretty close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I definitely think this is going to be going into the fourth quarter, and I really think that Harvard needs to do a really good job of making sure they're not looking past Columbia, because that team that they've been playing the last 10 years has not been the team that they're playing this year, right? So they got to make sure that they don't get tripped up here.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. All right, next up, we're going to go to the NEC. We got one matchup in the NEC this weekend, and that is Central Connecticut State, coming off a big 24-14 win over Wagner. They traveled to Easton, Massachusetts to take on Stonehill at 1-7. We'll say that the Blue Devils are favored in this one by 6.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Blue Devils' impressive win last week. I think we both were kind of down on them after losing the week before that. So, and just the way Stonehill's playing, it's tough to pick them right now. So, yeah, give me CCSU.
Yeah, give me CCSU as well. I think that with a win here, they'll get back to 500. I think it'd be a big win for them. But I'm going to go with the Blue Devils here as well. All right, now taking a look at the FCS Independents, both should be actually, I should say both. Merrimack has a bye this week. Sacred Heart is in action. They will host 2-7 on Long Island. Pios are 4-5. They are favored in this one by 3.5.
Yeah, I gotta say, I did not think that they would be having 4 wins coming into the season. The way that, especially that they started in the talent, that they were looking to, build from. So, give me Sacred Heart. I know that we've talked about how Long Island's kind of sneaky, and honestly, coming off a bye week, a win before that against CCSU, I wouldn't be surprised if Long Island won. In fact, I probably should be picking them in my head, but I'm just going to go with Sacred Heart because I'm really happy with where they've come so far this year.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Sacred Heart as well. And then with a win here, they're 5-5. Of course, next week they play at Merrimack for the Yankee Conference title. So, I mean, somehow they find a way to win that game. If they win this week, win that one, go 6-5, and they're able to win that rivalry game against Merrimack, that would be huge for this program, man. I don't think people realize quite how good a job Mark Knopfler's done with that program. I mean, it's been tough sledding for that program the last couple of years, and the fact that he's been able to get that program back to a place where they could potentially be above 500 by the end of next week, it's a pretty good year for that. Of course, Pios have 2 games left, this game and next week. They'll be at Merrimack. All right. The only other one we didn't get to is Holy Cross. Almost forgot about the Crusaders, but we didn't. Good thing that they're standalone, so it's hard, right? Because they play in the Patriot League, so they're standalone. They got a big one this week, though. They got Lehigh on Saturday. Of course, if you look at the Patriot League standings right now, Holy Cross is at the top. They're 3-0 in the Patriot League, 4-5 overall. Lehigh's 2-1. So this is a huge game. Lehigh does have a winning record. They played a pretty good schedule. This is a tough game, though, for Holy Cross because while they've played well within the conference, obviously they played a really tough non-conference schedule. But this Lehigh team is battle-tested. They're pretty good. This should be a pretty good matchup. Holy Cross is favored in this one by 3.5. I'm going to go with the Crusaders here. I think that they get to 500. They continue their mastery over the Patriot League in what is arguably the biggest game left on their schedule. Of course, if they went out and win the Patriot League, they won't get a playoff berth, probably end up on the road. But nonetheless, that would be an impressive feat for a program that got off to a tough start in Dan Curran's first year.
Agreed. Yeah, I like Holy Cross here as well. I mean, you look at some of these Lehigh wins, and it's, they beat Georgetown, sure, beat Fordham, sure, but, they're, even Princeton, too, one of the non-cons, they're having a pretty tough year. You get smoked by Yale. So this is huge because if you can assure that you win this week against Lehigh for Holy Cross, as long as you beat Bucknell the week after, you're set. You're smooth sailing the rest of the season. Right. So because those are kind of the teams at the top of the list. So I think that being the case, if you go into that last week of the season, if you lose to Georgetown, it's not going to matter because you should have the tiebreakers over everybody else at the top. So get this done. Don't look ahead to Bucknell. Take care of business against Lehigh, and then you'll be in a really great spot.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think that they will be in a really good spot. So they got to take care of business this week, though. I mean, again, they win this week. They're 4-0 in conference. They get to 500. Sets up for a strong finish here and a possible playoff berth, which, again, I think would be remarkable in Dan Kern's first year. People have to remember how much talent this Holy Cross team lost.
Right.
And it's not hyperbole. When you lose Matthew Sluka and you lose Jalen Coker and you lose Jacob Dobbs and you lose, what they've lost in the secondary and the guys that transferred. You lose a C.J. Hansen, a Luke Newman transfers, a Terrence Spence transfers, Dobbs transfers. Yeah, they had some guys back, Jordan Fuller, but he got hurt early in the year. You had Shorter back at receiver. Pazanski played last year, but they graduated a lot, and they lost a lot in the portal. So you have to take that into consideration here. It's not that the cupboard was bare because Chesney and his staff did a good job recruiting, but Dan Curran also walked into a situation where he had to replace a lot of talented guys. So I think that he and his staff have done a great job getting this program back on track and in playoff contention. All right, final thoughts here before we wrap it up. Final.
Yeah, I mean, we say it every week. Get out to games. There's a lot of great high school, a lot of great games on Saturday as we look forward here. And yeah, biggest one of the weekend, BC, right? So we'll see where that happens, what happens with them. So
yes, where it's going to happen is Chestnut Hill. Kevin Stone, yeah. Kevin Stone will be there for that one. Yeah, it's a big one for them, man. They lose this one, they drop to 4-5. You got to go to Dallas next week to play SMU. Then you come back to close out the season at home against North Carolina. And Pitt's really good. There's no guarantees they're going to be bowl eligible. I mean, if they were to lose Saturday, they go down to Dallas and lose. Now you have to win out to be bowl eligible. In other, that it could come down to that Pitt game on November 30th. So right. You don't want to put yourself in that position. They got to take care of business this week. But I still think, and I say this, we've gone from them being nationally ranked and Bill O'Brien building a monster to them now back in the same boat that they're always in, 6-6, 7-4, or 7-5 rather, potentially. So we shall see. In any event, Ryan, great job as always. Appreciate the time, my friend. And let's do this again next week.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Cernitas. Till next week, get out there and enjoy the games. There's only a couple weeks left. And as always, stay safe. We'll talk to you then.